And now we'll have a panel for the cannabis cultivation tax. You gentlemen can introduce yourself. And if a fight breaks out, that fellow over there's on my side. So.
Questions? I assume that's what everybody's got. Good evening, my name is John Fenley.
It's only John Fenley if you put the mic closer.
No, they can hear me way in back.
No, they can't.
Can you hear me now? Okay, so I will be a lean into the mic person. My name is John Fenley. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your interest in Measure A. I am here as John Fenley, not an elected supervisor of the Board of Supervisors representing District 5 in Trinity County. And let's go down the line and introduce ourselves. And to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure why these ladies and gentlemen are here, but they're here.
Good evening, Richard Coons, Trinity County Administrative Officer, and I'm essentially here just to answer any questions that would regard budgeting. As a county official, I am not a proponent. I'm here to support that. I'm just here to answer questions regarding the budget. So I'm not here as a advocate for the measure. I'm just here to field questions that, if it did pass, where the money could be spent or would be spent.
I'm Kim Hunter. I am the Building and Planning Director, and my department includes environmental health and cannabis as well. I'm also here just to answer any questions that may come up regarding revenue and how the revenue, if the measure passes, would benefit my department.
Tim Saxon, I'm here because I was told to keep them in line and protect them from you.
You were told to keep me in line.
Oh, keep them in line. Actually, I was invited to come here tonight to answer any questions if anything were to come up with regard to the measure, if it were to pass, and if any general fund dollars were to come to law enforcement, and where those funds might be spent. So that's why I'm here this evening.
Thank you for joining me. A little bit of history on how this kind of came about. I had a little bit of help from another gentleman about 4 or 5 years ago. I was able to bring forward a cannabis tax to the Board of Supervisors. We only had 4 supervisors at the time. It was a tax I really liked. It worked well for everybody. Unfortunately, it takes 4 supervisors to move it to the election to the ballot, and only 3 supervisors were in favor of it at that time, and we only had 4 supervisors, so we were unable to move forward. And I just kind of sat around and waited for somebody to come forward, and since we're the last county in the state that allows cannabis cultivation and some resale, to add to our tax base, since currently our only tax base to one county general fund is from your property tax dollars. There's a little bit of sales tax that goes into it, and that's about it. And honestly, in my looking forward, I don't know how many people will be staying growing cannabis if they can't comply with the county and state regulations. And they purchase properties, especially in certain areas of the county, that were going 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago or longer for $2,000 or $3,000, and now they're up to $200,000 or $300,000. And I look at my county collecting taxes on that higher base, but whether they will stay and continue to contribute to that, I'm very wary of that because of the way that I've watched the cannabis issue grow in this county, and a lot of the farmers don't seem to be able to come together to move forward. They've just recently formed a coalition, which is fantastic, and they're starting to get their feet on the ground and form some ideas and pull that together. So my concern was that as people walk away from their property, my tax revenue would go down, and we could have some revenue come up with cannabis tax to help the county move forward. I put together a cannabis tax that I really liked. I looked at bringing it forward to the Board of Supervisors, and I brought it to staff to go over it, and staff explained to me why they didn't like it, and I understood it. And we came up with something a little simpler. Going to take that to the Board of Supervisors. Looking at polling the Board of Supervisors, I didn't think it had a chance in Trinity County. And so, since no one else was doing anything, I decided to remove the Board of Supervisors from the idea, from the issue, and say, okay, it's yours. This is what I was going to bring to the Board of Supervisors per staff recommendation. Sorry you wasted a little bit of time on it. I apologize. I'll pay you back whatever you want. And it's up to you. I want you to have a voice in this instead of 5 supervisors that sometimes I don't think really represent us that well. And I'll put myself right there, so take your best shot. That is how this came together. I am here as a private citizen. Any of you could have done this. Anybody in the farming industry could have done this over the past few years. Anybody could have stepped forward. I see the county in the future as not having a good revenue base. You can ask CAO about that, or our auditor, whoever you want to talk to. And our revenue's been flat in this county for the past 6 years. And I don't know where new revenue is going to come from. CAO can sit here and tell you everything that the past 2 measures have told you. The schools are in bad shape and the ambulance won't survive. Well, I don't know if this county will survive without additional revenue. And somebody needs to step up and move that forward.
What is it exactly we're
You haven't read the Measure A yet?
What is it exactly? No, I didn't have it walking in. I was coming in on the other ones, but here.
Oh,
here-
sorry
here-
about
here.
that.
Tell me what it is.
It's there'll be a tax on, you have a little bit more about it. I left the papers that are all about it out in the foyer. There's a tax per square foot on a certain, on what is, to 10,000 square feet?
It's $1.47 per square foot, depending on the gross
There it
size.
is, right there. Thank you. You're good for a lot of things. And this stuff.
What John's looking for, it's $1.45 per square foot, depending on the gross size, and then I believe it is 6 or 7% of if we have retail distribution, something like that. It's not on cultivation, but it's on retail or distribution, you have additional 7%. Cultivation, though, is just a per square foot.
Yeah, so 85 cents square foot for 2,500 square feet or less of licensed outdoor mix. Did you hit the 2,501?
I did not.
Above that, it's 145 per square foot of licensed outdoor indoor mix canopy area, and a gross proceeds tax of, I don't think it's on there, sorry about that, thank you for bringing that in. Gross proceeds tax on the manufacturing of cultivated cannabis, and a gross proceeds tax of 7% on medical or legal cannabis storefronts and collectors for general governmental purposes. And that would go directly into general fund. Nothing is specified to move it to sheriff or fire, anything else. That's it. That's the way the ordinance is written at this point. You can take a look at the ordinance on tcballot.com. It's been there since it's been out, and there's also a link on there to download comparisons of every other county in California that allows cannabis cultivation and resale, and what the taxes are and aren't. Did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
What are those comparisons with other jurisdictions that,
Can you raise your hand if you have a question so we can get you a mic and everybody can hear? And we've got a couple up here too.
That's why I came back here. If I don't see a hand, I go where I do see them.
Let's get this gentleman here. You
John?
let me know first off, and then we'll get down to you guys.
John, a few years ago when you tried to pass this, it said you took 4 supervisors to vote it in, 3 did. Could you tell me the one who did not vote it in?
Supervisor Chadwick.
Thank you.
To answer John's question, I think it would be great, and I can sit here, I actually have the spreadsheet that's on the website that you can go look at and make your own comparison and do your own homework.
But since we're here,
You want me to go
You have
through
a
all? I actually appreciate that, but I'm moving forward with this ballot measure. I would like you to do some of the homework on it. I guess it's coming from the supervisor side. Everybody expects me to give you the information over and over and over. I really want you to get the correct information. Sometimes people don't believe me or what's going on. I can give you some examples, but I don't want to go through all 58 counties. Do you have a county that you'd like to hear about?
How about just our surrounding counties? Just a couple would be great. I mean, for some of us who maybe are getting high, I didn't plan to come to this specific measure, but since I'm here, I'd like to hear your side of things. And I'm imagining I'm going to hear the opposite side. So if you want us to listen to what you have to say and go and do the homework ourselves, let's get a better picture.
Humboldt has no banned activities or regulated medical activities or cultivation, delivery, dispensary, manufacturing, testing. The regulated adult use activities in Humboldt are cultivation, delivery, dispensary, manufacturing. Their tax measure, which there has passed, is commercial marijuana cultivation permittee shall pay an annual tax of $1 per square foot of outdoor cultivation area, $2 per square foot of mixed light cultivation area, or $3 per square foot of indoor cultivation area, regardless of whether or not marijuana is actually grown on such property. Humboldt County Board of Supervisors adopted an interim ordinance November 14, 2017 to allow regulation of adult use cannabis activities through current medical cannabis ordinances. They also adopted a little later a new set of land ordinances.
Okay, we got one up here.
I'm
Question?
going to hit Mendocino next. Hold on. Mendocino regulated activities are cultivation, dispensary, distribution, manufacturing, micro-business, and testing. Regulated adult activities are dispensary, distribution, manufacturing, micro-business, personal cultivation, and testing. Tax measures in Mendo. Commercial cannabis cultivation shall pay 2.5% tax on gross receipts until 2020. The Board of Supervisors has the authority to increase the rate up to 10% increments, up to 10% in increments of 2.5% after 2020, with minimum levels of payment based on the size of cultivation area. Cultivator dispensary shall pay 5% tax on gross receipts to a max of 10% in 2.5% increments. All other commercial cannabis businesses shall pay a flat rate of $2,500 annually with the yearly CPI-based adjustments after 2020. I'm assuming CPI would be out of Oakland, San Francisco.
thank you.
Jim, I've got two back up here. Back to your right.
All right, so I had two questions, and I guess they're largely going to be directed to the CAO and the planning director. First, is there a projection on what sort of revenue would be generated at the current license level and projected licensing levels? And second, and this would be more to the CAO and the sheriff, are there any plans that the county has right now on where this revenue would go if in fact it would pass?
Well, currently we run right around 300 licensed. So if we just take the 300 licensed and we say the average is 10,000 square feet, which gives us 3 million square feet, that's going to end up around $4.2 million if that were to come to fruition. As far as where the money is going to go, currently law enforcement represents about 55% of general fund budget, so it would be obvious that much of it would go to law enforcement.
Got time for another, we got another one here.
If I can add a little comment on that regarding our Board of Supervisors. That is the way the county can do it. Board of Supervisors would have the final say, so you need to let your supervisor know that you want the revenue to go to that point. There are several candidates in this room. Talk to them about it, make sure they're listening to what you want. Also, one of the problems I have as a citizen is many times the sheriff will get a grant, or the sheriff might get money from a cannabis tax, and the board thinks they can pull back the amount of money that they normally give him. And that is something you need to talk to your Board of Supervisors about and make sure they do what you want them to do. Sorry,
Okay.
Sheriff.
I think, okay. So to share some of my history, I am a cultivator. My name is Dana. I live in Hayfork. The state has done evaluations on how heavily taxed the industry is, and most counties are shifting how they're doing their square footage tax. And another thing I will add is that there is a pathway in the other counties to actually cultivate, and we have been hamstringed in Trinity County repeatedly and effectively over and over. Also, the 50% of the square footage tax will be due before we even would necessarily plant or harvest. It's not at sale. Half would be due at the beginning of the year, and the other 50% will be due at the end of the year, regardless of natural disaster or personal disaster. Anything could happen. It's a crop. So that there are some facts out there. I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Terry, we got one over here.
Okay, I have a couple statements, and then I do have a question. Okay, first off, we're being compared to Mendocino and Humboldt. They actually have economies there, harbors there, schools there, wineries there. Why don't we compare ourselves to what we are, the poorest community? We have a gentleman over here just asked us for $16 million to fix our schools. And things haven't been explained here right. See, distribution facilities do bring in revenue here. Manufacturing facilities do bring in revenue here. Retail does bring in revenue here. So when we have people constantly fighting these and wondering why we haven't been able to get revenue, when they fought my project specifically in Douglas City for 3 years where we could have been gaining revenue like we are talking about here, you have to look within inside of yourself and wonder how this works. Real industries don't tax their businesses out of play before they even start. You actually give incentives to bring industry to your community. We need serious revitalization, especially with our schools, but also within our entire community, and we need to revitalize our economy. We have no economy. Do not tax us out of this economy. If you kill this industry immediately, we are done. So don't compare us to Mendocino and Humboldt that have economies. Compare us to a place that has zero economy.
Is there a question about the measure specifically?
Well, yes. I'm actually wondering how it's stated for the reasoning that us regulated farmers haven't been giving to this with any money. Because like I stated today in the supervisor meeting, I know of over $1 million us cannabis farmers, regulated farmers, have given towards the general plan alone. So you've made a statement leading into this that is inaccurate and false.
I need to address this. What statement is inaccurate and false?
That no benefits have come from the growers here.
I don't remember saying that.
I can
I'm
quote
sorry.
it, right?
Did I say that no benefit has come from the growers in this county? Did I say that?
It's written right here. Would you please state it verbatim?
Hold on, I got somebody here, and then we'll get up to him.
We have no we have no taxes from it. And if you look at the money that you pay for permitting, that has to stay within that agency in the county. None of it can be spent on anything else.
Thank you. Well, for the record, we do pay a $1,000 assessment per license that goes directly towards the general fund, or the general planned fund.
General plan, yes, and that
Yes,
is
so
very specific then.
Yes, and that is a benefit to the county. We obviously all need a new general plan. But back to the legislative analysis report. In Proposition 64, the state was tasked with reviewing the success or failure of the taxation system, and the and it was due out just recently. It just recently came out. So maybe you were unaware of this. The analysis states that overtaxation, along with prohibitive ordinances, are the main reason why the black market continues to thrive and why the regulated market is continuing to have a hard time breaking down those barriers. So overtaxation on each level. And so to instill another tax on our level will ultimately cause the cost of goods to go up and cause the price to the consumer to continue to rise, which is the reason why people are still continuing to exploit the black market. The $1.45 a square foot is, well, 50% more than Humboldt County, and they are more, set up near highways, whatever. I don't see any reason why we should put ourselves in an economic disadvantage behind our neighbors. That's certainly not a good idea. But in the LAO report, the Legislative Analysis Office report, the cultivation tax scores similarly. It is by far the worst mechanism to tax this product or probably any other product. I can't imagine what it would have been like for a timber company to pay stump fees before they've been out into the hills and cut any trees down, but that's exactly what we're being asked for. And it's being ignored for the fact that this is an agricultural crop. There are crop failures. Many of us have been fighting very hard to survive in this industry to provide benefit to our county. I think it would have been very nice before this measure was released to have possibly communicated with the cultivators in the community that you know well and have had plenty of access and opportunity to do so. And I think that would be the best alternative, is to vote no on this measure. Work together as a community to find something that actually works and then pass that.
And I wish that you had stepped forward 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, before I'm hearing that a county won't exist next year very well and offer services. Adrian, I hear you, I understand it, and I've watched the farmers since probably 2011, and I've watched them beat each other up, disagree, walk away from each other, yell at each other, and not come together. One thing I'm actually ecstatic about is, because this is there and it's pissed so many people off, you have formed a coalition. And you are now talking to each other and working together. I don't know what to say. I'm happy for that. I'm disappointed that the county doesn't have a solid revenue income. They used to from timber. We don't anymore. We don't have the Costco. We don't have car dealerships. I probably wouldn't choose to live here if we had a Costco and all that stuff. I understand and what was said earlier regarding overtaxing you. Well, we aren't there's no tax right now, and even the last tax measure that was brought forward 4 years ago, you probably wouldn't be taxed until track and trace kicked in, and it would have been ideal for what was going on. I'm sorry that didn't work out. This is where we are now. This is what I brought forward. I'm sorry I didn't reach out to everyone and work through this. As a private citizen, that's not necessarily my job.
John, I have a clarifying question. I think you referred earlier to the fact that there are 30 or so counties in the state that allow for commercial cannabis. Did I hear you say that Trinity County is the only county that does not have a tax?
I don't know how many counties actually allow cannabis growing, but yes, Trinity County is the only one that does not tax it in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, we got another one up here.
Are you the one that authored this bill?
Yes.
Okay, did you go to college? Do you have a degree? Do you run any businesses?
Can you keep it to the measure?
It is, because anyone that has ran a business or has gone to school, I graduated with a business administration degree, focused in accounting, will know simply that this is just a tax to kill business. So I'm trying to figure out why someone would write it in such terms. I'm guessing you've consistently voted against cannabis reforms, so we should probably change this to...
And what is cannabis reform?
The legal cannabis program we have in the county.
Okay, I don't have a response to that, especially on the supervisor side, because I'm not here representing the county or the Board of Supervisors. But you might want to talk to some other people about how I felt and dealt with cannabis. I'd appreciate that instead of trying to bait me.
The reason there's no tax in Trinity County is because there's no retail. It's not allowed to be sold anywhere in the county.
And as a public citizen, I'll agree with you 100%, and I think it's shameful.
Hi, good afternoon, or evening rather. I've read the measure, and in reading it, you wouldn't know it when you filled out the signature ballot petitions, but just below in the actual full measure, it does say, and this is in the notice of intention of circulation petition, second paragraph, which is the statement of reason. The second sentence of that reason says, currently commercial cannabis owners pay no taxes to Trinity County and the citizens see no benefit from the business activities taking place within the county. I actually believe that's patently false. And I can tell you a couple different ways in which funds are generated by our program. The licenses increase property values at the sale. So if you go on MLS, you'll see the most valuable properties being sold consistently are licensed farms in this county. That is an increase in the property values that goes to the general fund. Additionally, most farms require building permits. You have to have a house, septic, well, greenhouses, processing buildings. These all cost money. Those permits allow for an assessed value, increased property value, which increases property taxes, which goes to the general fund. Additionally, all of those permits, including the licensing and the building permits, have a general plan fee update assessed to them. Now that is separate from the general fund revenue that you've been discussing, but no doubt we need a general fund, a general plan update in this county, and cultivators pay $1,000 a year roughly to that. I think my question right now at this moment, maybe even to the CAO, would be to ask how much of a $5,000 license fee from cannabis cultivation goes towards the sheriff's office and code enforcement? A percentage roughly.
I don't have that number percentage-wise. I don't know. I mean, we can tell you what their annual budget is, but you know, it really depends on how many licenses we have. So if we have fewer licenses, the percentage is much higher. If we have if we have a great number of licenses, obviously that number goes down. So it's not really a percentage number. It is a fixed cost every year, which is, what's your code enforcement budget?
Code enforcement budget for this year is approximately $700,000.
Okay.
Out of that, so far this year, we spent about $370,000.
Well, I ask because I don't think it's quite well understood exactly, but there was a deal made when we enacted the ordinance in this county. And that is that licensing fees were going to go towards enforcement of illegal cultivation sites as well. So currently our license fees go to support the sheriff's office through several deputies and multiple vehicles along with airplane rides and probably other things. The details are not well known, but what I will say is let's just say half of our fees go towards the enforcement effort currently. If that's the case, I'm probably paying more towards code enforcement than my property taxes. The code enforcement efforts the farmers pay for, those deputies, when there are abatement fines, those fines, I believe, go to the general fund. They do not go back into the cannabis program. So maybe I'm misunderstanding how our government works, but to me it seems like when we pay licensing fees to abate illegal activities that are not directly associated with our licensed program, that seems like a fee that's really a tax. So maybe I'm confused on the situation.
I don't think you're confused on the situation. I think that every dollar that's collected as a through abatement or a deal does go into general fund. And that is outside, that would be outside of the permitting fees or anything else. Does that corroborate what you're saying? Never mind.
He walked away with the mic.
Okay.
I'll come back up. Bill had a question down here. I'm just trying to get around to everybody.
Yeah, Bill Burton here. If this happens and it passes, then we could imagine a lot of the legal growers exiting the legal process, and maybe 300 permits or whatever the number is dropping just catastrophically down to 30 or 50 or something like this. Because, as you can see, there's so much in this ordinance that is going to cost this industry that's already being having extreme amounts of tax. Yeah. And so there's also a method of taxing this industry after dispensaries arrive, which is a sales tax type of thing, which is very obvious. So when somebody's buying, you actually know the moment of how much to tax that amount. So I mean, it seems like, I'm actually wondering, for this to be successful, it needs to be separated, the dispensary option and the moment when we go for the growers and the productivity time. I mean, unfortunately, John, I think that would be more successful to offer two different initiatives. And this.
Then you're welcome to do that this coming November.
Well then,
and you
just
can,
follow
if
up on
this
that.
one happens to pass, you can set it down, put it to sleep.
Well,
It's your
the
choice, it's your
follow-up on that
decision.
is if it were to pass, that the community, it's not that it's generating revenue for the county, but the community continues to have empty restaurants and empty hardware stores because of the exit of the legal participants.
Scott, you've got one down front here too.
Oh,
The nurse?
let me get, there's a couple of people who haven't asked a question up there, and then I'll come back down and get you. I promise, okay? Thanks. Yep.
Or you could jump up here if you
Or
want.
you could jump up here, yeah.
Do not tempt us.
John, I have another question, and it's this is really something that would strangle the few folks that have gone for licensing and permitting. The state LAO report is really clear about how these local taxes only serve to encourage the black market. And I wonder if it crossed your mind at all, or if you could please speak to the concept that if your average permittee has to shell out $14,500 before they grow, doesn't that take $14,500 out of each of those households' local spending possibilities? I mean, this could really harm our local economy. I think that is obvious to everyone paying attention. I wonder, could you please speak to that? And this is a huge misstep. It's contrary to encouraging all these small businesses. Any other broke county like us would be offering tax breaks and incentives for 300 small businesses to come open up in their county. But this takes money right away, directly away from our local businesses. It could serve to shut down Main Street in Hayfork and Weaverville.
Well, Weaverville shut down, okay. Well, I don't believe there's any permits allowed in District 2 or Weaverville. So I'm not quite sure how Weaverville is going to shut down or move forward. They don't allow cultivation in Weaverville, am I correct? And also, you know, it's 50%. You pay up front and then you pay at the end. I'm really sorry that there's a few growers, a few farmers that I hear from that are devastated by this. I feel for them. I also hear from quite a few farmers that, fine, this is not a problem. We look forward to doing this. Make sure that there's a sheriff out if there's a problem. We're looking forward to it. They also run their business a little bit different. We're only looking at about 300 to 500 participants. That's actually, when you look at it, that's putting a lot onto 300 to 500 participants. But hopefully they're making a lot of money and doing a great job. And
my question
I've
is,
always
what do you tell a small business owner in Hayfork that has to shut down their small business
Jill, let's wait.
Hold
I'll come
on,
back over to
let's
you.
get a
the
mic
lady
back to
down
you
front
because
here,
you've got
and then I'll
very
come back.
pertinent
Okay,
information.
We'll pick that up.
Do you want me to tell? Okay, so I went to a meeting with somebody who's running for Board of Supervisors, and she had made a comment, and I don't have my notes, that there actually is the full amount of permits that we have available are actually not, we don't have that many permits actually. What's the amount of permits that we have available?
Around 300.
300 available?
Not available,
I'm
no.
sorry.
Oh.
We've issued 300.
Okay, how many are available?
500.
So how long has it been like?
530.
How long has it been like that we have not been even close to filling the amount of permits that we actually have?
Since the beginning.
Yeah, since the beginning.
Okay.
We've never exceeded 325, I don't think.
So I'm new to this county. I've been here for about a year and a half, so I come from a much larger county. So bear with me when I'm trying to understand. We have no, what did they call it back there? Freeway or whatever they're calling it, for them to get rid of their product, their licensed, legal product in our county. Is that what they're saying?
In this county?
In this county, Trinity County, there is no way for them
Retail
to.
storefront dispensary uses, we don't have that.
So
Ordinance
all of
permitting
that money, since we're not taxing it beforehand, is actually going to another county and getting taxed there.
Well, usually another city that's close by that does have dispensaries and does have a tax on it, and it's called renting.
Okay, but not our county.
Correct.
So that money that they're talking about, that they get taxed, I'm sorry, you get taxed, but it's not our county. It's a different county. So we're talking about, it's Shasta County, not
Shasta
Trinity
County
County.
does not allow growing.
No,
Reading.
they're taxing
Yes.
the dispensaries,
Yes.
right? I mean, they're taxing the end product, right? So they're getting taxed on the end product. We are not collecting any tax on this product.
Correct.
So where's the money supposed to come for law enforcement to do the job that they promised they were going to do? Board of Supervisors. So where's that money? They're saying they're not protected. Where's that money going to come from? If this bond measure passes, how do they guarantee, or how are you going to guarantee them that that money's going to go towards protecting the licensed grows and not the illegal ones?
This is where you beat up your Board of Supervisors.
At the meetings that are closed or not at the right time, or what was going on with that? What time is the Board of Supervisor meeting? Day, night? When?
9 a.m.
During the week when people work? Okay.
You brought up a great point. So the county you came from is a large county, does a lot of growing and does have a taxation. And we haven't, we've been doing this, seems like forever. We're allowed 530 permits for the Board of Supervisors. We have 300, and that's all we have still without a tax. You know, my goodness, you're not collecting any money off them, and still nobody's coming.
Yeah.
So,
Because of the illegal ones, is what I understand.
and that was an issue with our previous law enforcement, and I've been fairly vocal about it. I've been vocal to my constituents that are farmers. You should be in your supervisor's face saying, get this illegal farm out of here now, because I'm paying to play. I'm paying to move this forward. So go out, start beating up your supervisors.
I'm wondering about the costs.
Your new ones. Go on, sorry.
What costs have been incurred to the county for this industry? Has it cost the county in terms of enforcement costs and just for enforcing and regulating and managing the paperwork and all of the other things that are involved with this industry? Has it cost the county? And also, I understand there were a couple of lawsuits that were filed against the county by growers. And what did that cost for us? And when you look at the revenue input versus the costs, where does it lie right now? Are we at a net loss for this industry, considering all the various costs associated with that industry?
Go for a fee study, sure.
The fees collected are to support the program, so it should be a net zero. So the fees that we collect, that's all we can spend. Now, with the sheriff, you'll have overtime and other costs. associated to the illegal portion of cannabis, but it is supposed to be a net zero. What we collect, we can spend. We can't spend the money on anything that doesn't pertain to supporting the program. Concerning lawsuits, I'm not sure which one you're talking about. We're sued constantly, but that's part of doing business. I mean, you go to the Hill, compared to Shasta County, they have 20 current lawsuits going right now. So I mean, that's just part of doing business with a county that you're going to be sued. But when you come to the cost of the program, what does it cost the county? It costs the county exactly what we make. So the total budget for the cannabis is what? For cannabis division? Do you have a general idea? It's about 1.2 million or something like that?
No, I was getting acquainted with the budget.
Okay, I think it's around 1.2, 1.3, plus then you add the cost of our code enforcement. And then we do have the cost of defending any potential lawsuit. So if it pertains to cannabis, then that's part of the associated cost.
I would just keep in mind that there are a couple revenue streams that come in with this. As stated earlier, there's a revenue stream from fines, and that can go into general fund and does go to a specific purpose. The program is required to pay for itself, the cannabis program, whether it does or not. That's something to take a look at. The answer you got was a little nebulous, but I think that question needs to continue to be asked.
I would like to thank John for doing all the legwork to get this on the ballot. It was something I've been thinking about for quite a while. And, I don't grow weed, but I know, I kind of try and keep up on what's going on, various websites and Facebook pages and stuff like that, just because it's kind of an intriguing industry. It's kind of a boom or bust thing. And over the years, I've tried to figure out what is the benefit to Weaverville or Trinity County, other than a couple of nurseries, Evergreen and Weaverville. Probably the gas stations make some, and then Tops Market, would get something. But what I see are a lot of businesses that were purchased for the purpose of legitimizing funds, and then once the grower makes their million, they're out of here and the buildings are vacant. And Miller's comes to mind, initially when that was sold. The other thing is that someone back here mentioned that it's an increase in property values because pot land is more valuable. Well, it's only valuable to the pot farmers. I mean, I have acreage, and there's a pot farm down the road, and who's going to want to buy my place? The only person who's going to want to buy my place is another pot farmer. And so that's kind of like, if I want to get out of here and move to Turkey, I have to sell it to a pot farmer, which isn't fair to the other neighbors. There's only one grower in the neighborhood, and there's 50 parcels, and it's someone sneezed in the punch bowl and it's kind of ruined. And so I think this parcel tax or this fee up front is a good idea, because there's no how would you collect your money? Well, let me step back. This was an illegal industry for 40 or 50 years, and it's just now come into light. And we haven't eliminated the illegal mindset of this industry. And if you wait until after the crop has been grown and harvested, and the funds have been collected from the dispensaries or wherever it gets sold, there's no telling. It's kind of like doing your taxes. You admit to a part of it, but you don't talk about the rest of the stuff you get under the table. So by collecting the money up front, the county gets their money, and they don't have to wait on the honesty of a grower to come up and pay for it later on afterwards. Another thing is you take a look at the police blotter in the Trinity Journal, and about every third one is a pot-related offense that you could tie it to it. Like Trinity Pines gets all sorts of activity, and and there's always something going on. I think.
Is there a question here?
Yeah, I guess my question is I would, how was there from this into a question? So the way to make sure, what is the best way to make sure that law enforcement gets a larger percentage of this tax?
Board of Supervisors, making sure that they support it. In the past, watching the board work, even before the current sitting supervisors.
We've got a couple up here too, Roger, before you get to that next
Real quick,
point too.
I'd just like to address a couple of things. The previous question was how's it been affecting law enforcement? And recently, over the last year, your sheriff's office has been responding to several calls about burglaries and robberies involving both licensed and unlicensed cannabis cultivators. That's necessitated huge responses from not only the sheriff's office, but also being assisted by the Highway Patrol, Fish and Wildlife, and Forest Service law enforcement officers. That creates a huge response from us. Overtime, undue wear and tear on our vehicles, fuel. So that's an additional cost that we've been incurring. The CEO knows this because I've gone to him saying, hey, I'm over budget, and here's why. So that's a cost that we've never had before that needs to be addressed. The question in the back there with regard to something about abatements, I can tell you through code enforcement, that code enforcement funding only deals with code enforcement. We do not use that for abatements on any other properties, on private property, private lands, anything like that, public lands. That comes out of a different funding source. So those monies are not used for anything other than code enforcement.
All right, got a question up here.
So as a licensed cannabis farmer, well, right now I'm sitting, but I feel like there's not many of us, barely standing, like 300, right? I used to know a lot of farmers, and the ones I know now, I think are all in this room. So my question regarding taxes is, I'd like to say I can't wait to pay taxes, especially after hearing the hospital, the school situation right now. But I actually kind of have to wait to pay taxes because what you're asking us is just to add that to a budget that we're all just, I mean, this is like now. It's running our lap. I am wondering, obviously we can't change this, but is there any way we could at least take that into account and the midway to pay half now and pay at the end? This is paid all at the end. At least this is the first year of being taxed like this. Throwing our labs is tough. Maybe the following year we think about when we're going to pay. But to put it in our laps right now is a little bit, is there any way we could think about that differently?
That's something that can be discussed. One other thing regarding collecting it up front and at the end is that you know what you're going to pay. It's not dependent on a percentage of what you sell. You can budget for it, you can look forward to it, what it will be. Also, if we start involving the state, they will take their percentage. I wanted to keep it local so that our own county has to deal with it, has to collect it, has to spend it. The state can be, especially with track and trace, everything that I deal with the state of California is 90 to 180 days behind. And that is giving, in PSA 2, we're asking for food to feed the seniors, for money to feed the seniors. That's federal money that's passed through the state that everyone's working right on the edge. There's nothing saved up. We have no contingency. I didn't especially want to put this county in that position again of paying the state a percentage for processing these taxes. Eventually that will probably happen once track and trace really kicks in and moves forward.
I think what John's trying to say is every department we have that's reimbursement based from the state, it's 18 to 24 months before we see that reimbursement. So if this were a tax that we're counting on the state to audit it and then reimburse us. We're looking at 18 to 24 months, which makes it very difficult to budget because we're not budgeting in our current year, we're budgeting 2 years out. So I think that's what John was trying to get at, is
That was my
it makes it
point.
very difficult.
Exactly, from us farmers. You hit it on the head.
John, you said that you did some research with some people in creating this initiative. And usually in businesses, the industries come, like the wine industry, they kind of made the rules for the wine industry. And I'm kind of wondering, was TAA the party that you went to for your information on this?
Absolutely not.
Then could you please tell us which farmers you went to?
Excuse me, they have absolutely nothing to do with this ballot initiative. As a matter of fact, for a while they were questioning whether they would even look at it or have anything to do with it. And I'm just going, fine, knock yourself out. All of you can go fight amongst yourselves.
So you just admitted you did take it to them for their opinion.
No, they came to me. Ooh, very good. They came to me.
Okay, so what I'm wondering is...
And it was after it was written, Terry.
Okay, so...
And out there in the public.
That's fine, but now...
No, it's not fine.
Daryl pointed out something earlier, though, is that he realizes the ones that are still here from the start of this are pretty much sitting back here, and I don't know if any of these gentlemen, you didn't reach out to any of us gentlemen for this, because we were here in the beginning when this all started, and we've been involved, and we actually came to the county to go to work with the supervisors because we didn't want to write an initiative that took away the power from this county. You being one of those supervisors, let's remember that.
Wouldn't return my phone calls.
Actually, at the time, and putting this together, and still now, my interest as a supervisor and now as a citizen was for Trinity County.
Scott, we got time for about 2 more questions. These
Thank
folks
you.
will stick around for you. So.
Thank you. I actually have 2 questions. One is going to be for Mr. Fenley, and then one will be for Mr. Saxon. As a business person, I've owned my own business, and I've been running a local special district, which has its challenges as well. This particular, it's difficult. It's difficult to do any type of business. One that's just now coming into its own, and it's growing. It's got its own growing pains, its own sticky wickies, as I like to call them. It's not our job necessarily to make that successful, and it's always difficult. And I applaud the people within the industry that are doing everything they can to be successful as business people in the right way, and finding the right locations and doing what they can to be part of the community. And as we move on from just the growers into the bigger things, the distribution, manufacturing, and eventually retail maybe, we have to think of the ways that is going to help the county as a whole. And right now, most of it's a bit of a bubble with the cannabis industry, or so it seems to those that are not in the industry. Everything every permit fee they pay, it's helping the program, it pays for the program and the law enforcement, and so Mr. Fenley, do you see us by being able to get a tax that goes into the general fund that then is used for all of the people of Trinity County, do you see that being able to help maybe with housing and other things, maybe even supporting businesses that would come into the county? That's the question for you. And for Sheriff Saxon, extra money in from a tax in this manner, would that also assist in being able to provide more busts for illegal operations and better protection for the legalized farmers?
Okay, your first question regarding using it for additional housing, things like that, that would be a separate revenue stream that the state is working on. The general fund, if you look at the budget and the way the general fund works, general fund, help me out here if you want, general fund pays for assessor, people in assessor's office, people that would take your marriage license, look at your grant deed, collect your property tax, I'm sorry, and there's a whole set of businesses and agencies within the county that operate only on your tax dollars right now, which is your property tax. his salary, every salary in here works that way. The Board of Supervisors' salary. That's the only place the revenue comes from. Everything else you see, Health and Human Services, behavioral health,
Can I disagree with you?
Sure, you can in a second. Department of Transportation comes from your state and federal tax dollars. Department of Transportation roads comes from your gas tax given directly to us. Go ahead and disagree with me.
We have general fund and we also have non-general fund. Non-general fund are those that are mandated by the state or federal government, which are social services, mental health, those programs. However, if we had an increased revenue that we came into the general fund, we could use that and leverage that to go after grants, which would help those departments. Right now, every state or federal grant requires a county match. Most of them are between 10, sometimes 50%. So that really limits the kind of ties the hands of the county to only allow us to go after grants we can afford, which would be those up to a couple $100,000. If we have to come up with $25,000 for a $250,000 match, $250,000 sounds like a lot of money, but usually grants are 3 years. And $250 when you're activity delivery of that $250,000 grant is $200,000, which means that gives you $50,000 to hire staff and administrate a grant over 3 years. I can't employ someone for $15,000 a year. So what it ends up doing is burdening those current employees who already wear 3 or 4 hats. To have additional revenue where we could go after the $5, $6 million, $10 million grants, those are significant, and those are the things that we could bring into the county with additional revenue, whether it be this or something else. We need those additional general fund revenues so we can go after the grants that do help economic development, that do allow us to do improvements downtown and in other areas, so we can eliminate blight and those type of programs. So
you're saying it would help bring jobs in? It could?
I am actually saying that, yes.
We're going to take...
That's what I wanted to, Tim Saxon didn't answer my question yet, but I just wanted to verify that that's what you were saying. It would help, it could help create jobs.
Right, and one of the stupidest grants that I've dealt with is for Ruth Airport, and that is to repave it, and it was a done deal, and then wow, we couldn't come up with a $25,000 match to get it done. And Ruth Airport, I think there's one airplane there. There's other airports, Keith, that need it more than Ruth, I agree, but Ruth qualified, so we were going to go after it, and oops, can't even do that.
We're coming up on 7:30. We're going to take one last question here.
So I don't have to answer? Okay.
Yeah, this question is for you, Tim and Kim. This has nothing to do with taxation.
Well, I did have a question down here, though, still. And the answer is yes.
So this question for Kim and Tim has nothing to do with taxation or the legal marijuana industry in Trinity County. Right now, the violation, dollar per violation is $100 per violation. I think we spoke a few months ago about getting that up a little bit higher to bring in some extra money to enforcement. Do we know what the upper limit is, and would that not be a good way to stem some of the black market growers coming into our community?
Sheriff, before you answer that, I have to really say I'd like you to keep it on topic regarding Measure A, since that's why we're here, and maybe you and Liam can take that.
That's actually a question for the planning director, and we should keep that on topic for Measure A, so we can talk about that later.
Hey, well, hopefully you've got some information you can use for March 3rd. These folks are going to be around for a while. Heaven forbid if I have any more questions, I'll write them down or answer them. Thank you very much. One other comment, I'm sorry. Next Thursday, January 30th, we've invited all the supervisors candidates here, 6 o'clock. Weaverville, Southern Trinity, Hayfork, Douglas City. I believe there's 3 supervisors that are up and several candidates. So please come back and you'll hear their proposals and get to ask them questions. Thank you very much again.